These police officers were sworn in to serve and protect, but did the total opposite. So they made this list as the most corrupt police officers in American history. Number 1, Stephen Caracappa and Louis Eppolito. They were both police officers who worked for the New York Police Department between 1986 and 1990. It is said during their time on the force, they were best known as the Mafia cops who worked for the Lucchese crime family boss, Anthony Gaspipe Queso. It is said during their time working for the Lucchese crime family, they were involved in committing at least 8 murders, kidnapping rivals, and accepting as much as $375,000 to leak information on mafia rivals so they could be killed. And because of these crimes, they were both sentenced to life in federal prison in 2009. Number 2, Joe Burge. He was a police officer who worked for the Chicago Police Department in the 70s and the 80s. And it is said during his time working for the Chicago Police Department, he was involved in torturing over 100 people for false confessions. It is said during Burge's interrogations on suspected criminals, he would stalk people with cattle prods, smother people with plastic typewriter covers, and shove guns in their mouths while pretending to play Russian roulette. And because of these things, he was finally convicted in 2010 on federal charges for perjury and obstruction of justice for denying that he had inflicted cruel and unusual punishment on prisoners while in his custody, which led to him being sentenced to 4.5 years in federal prison. Number 3, Robert Smith. He was a cop who worked for the NYPD's 105th Precinct in Queens, New York for 2 decades. And it is said during his time as a police officer, he was known for pointing his gun at black people who passed him on the street just to see the look on their faces. He was also known for his involvement in selling drugs, which was reported in 2020 that he once hand-delivered a kilo of heroin from one cop to another for $1,200. Plus, he was involved in a car crash scheme that scammed car crash victims out of their money, in which he was able to pocket $20,000 from this scheme. And it is said during his 2-decade-long career, he had 33 complaints filed against him, in which people accused him of excessive physical force, refusing to provide his badge number, and repeatedly making sexist and racist comments. And because of these things, he was indicted on federal charges in 2021 for bribery and drug offenses, which led to him being sentenced to 97 months in federal prison. Number 4, Malik Snail. He was a police officer who worked for the Philadelphia Police Department from 1996 to 2008. And in 2009, he was found guilty on federal charges for conspiracy to interfere with interstate commerce, and a weapons offense in connection with a home invasion, and a drug-related robbery involving a Philadelphia drug kingpin. And as of today, he is currently at a Philadelphia halfway house waiting to be released. On June 27, 2024. Number 5, Ronald Watts. He is a former police sergeant who worked for the Chicago Police Department. And it is said during his time on the Chicago Police Force, him and his team of officers were extorting money from drug dealers in the former Ida B. Wells projects and falsely arresting people who would not cooperate. And in November of 2011, he was finally indicted on federal charges after he stole $5,200 from a homeless person who told him he was transporting the money for drug dealers. But unknown to Watts at the time, the homeless person was an FBI informant who was setting him up the whole time, which led to him being sentenced to 22 months in federal prison. And it is said after he was sentenced, more than 200 felony convictions that he was involved in were thrown out.